What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. I hope you're doing very well. I am testing out the Deathspeaker build on Shadow Priest. I did a recent video on Shadow Priest talking about all of the changes that came through in all the talent trees, because there's a massive amount of changes. So if you want to know about that, go look at that video. This is just about the Deathspeaker build and my initial testing on it. Some TLDRs at the beginning here is my item level is very low. The damage is not super high. It is in certain sections, and I'll show you some footage from the dungeon, but overall my damage isn't super high because I'm only 407 item level. I don't have any stones equipped. I don't think they're good, though. I don't think they're actually good for Shadow Priest. That's what I've been told. I do have a thing here, but I'm not sure if it's any good. So I don't have them equipped right now. But bottom line is my item level is kind of low. I don't have any of the new tier set bonuses, of course. I've barely played this thing. I just wanted to get an initial look at Deathspeaker. So let's talk about the talents for the build and how it works. Then we'll get to the footage. What has changed with Deathspeaker in 10.1? Because that's a big thing that people need to know. First of all, Shadow Word Death is a 10-second cooldown. I talked about this in my other video. It used to be a 20-second cooldown. So literally, it's cut in half, which means our uptime on Shadow Word Death should be basically doubled. The normal casts that you get to use are doubled, which is really good for this build, of course, because you want to be using Shadow Word Death as much as possible. This feels really fun to play now. I'll show you some in the footage, but there are multiple packs where you're pressing Shadow Word Death 5 or 6 times, depending on kind of the procs that you're getting from Deathspeaker, and then how you can utilize the Death and Madness, of course, which gives you, it refreshes Shadow Word Death if you're using it on targets that are below 20% of their max HP, right? That's one of the main things you need to be looking for when you're killing enemies, is getting those kind of resets. But the reason that this works really well is because of Screams of the Void. Yeah, in mostly because of Screams of the Void. There's other reasons as well, but this thing says your Devouring Plague causes Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch to do damage 80% faster for 3 seconds. Your Deathspeaker procs off of Shadow Word Pain damage. So if you throw in a Shadow Crash, right, and then you get a Devouring Plague out there, your Shadow Word Pains are all proccing 80% faster, okay, which is really, really good. And that means that you're going to get a Deathspeaker proc in AoE, very, very likely. And then, of course, we're comboing Deathspeaker with Mindbender, which I know people have abandoned Mindbender, but they really kind of buffed it in 10.1. They made Inescapable Torment a 1-point talent instead of a 2-point talent. So it means that you can go and get other things in the rest of the bottom of your tree that you want to get, other talents that you really want to get, like Idol of Cthulhu and Idol of N'Zoth. You only have to spend 1 point in Inescapable Torment. It's slightly nerfed from the 2-point version, but overall it's a buff because it's more efficient, right? Which is really, really good. So whenever you cast Mind Blast, Shadow Word Death, your guy will do a big slash. If I look at my overall damage from this dungeon, Inescapable Torment is about 5.3%. Not bad. Shadow Word Death is way up here at 8%, of course, because that's how many I cast it 116 times, guys. You're going to see how many times I cast Shadow Word Death. It's pretty insane. So that's the big combo there. You've got Deathspeaker, Screams of the Void, procs Deathspeaker. It also procs Idol of N'Zoth a lot. And then you have your Mindbender benefiting from all of the Shadow Word Deaths that you're able to cast, because getting your extra procs on Inescapable Torment. And then the final section we have here is, of course, Void Torrent going down into Idol of Cthulhu. So the biggest reason we're doing Idol of Cthulhu is because of the Insanity generation. It's really, really strong. And we do use Void Torrent quite a bit. And we're using Mind Spike as our filler. We don't cast Mind Spike as much as I would like to. I need to work on that. But this is actually pretty good. I think it's the best option for this build. You can't really go Yogg-Saron because you need 3 points. So you'd have to get 2 points for Auspicious or Tormented Spirits and 1 point for Yogg. This only requires 1 in Malediction and 1 in Idol of Cthulhu. They buffed Malediction, making it only a 1-point node. So this is much, much better for us with this build. You can't even really get down to Yogg-Saron, even if you wanted to. Okay? That's kind of the main setup. Here's the last talent I want to talk about. Of course, we're running Dark Ascension, but here's the big talent we're running. Distorted Reality. Almost every single build runs the other talent, which is Mind's Eye, making Devouring Plague cost 5 less Insanity. This makes Devouring Plague cost 5 more Insanity, but it makes it last 12 seconds. And I really like this playstyle. It feels to me like this is better for what I'm trying to do, when I'm focusing more of my build on pressing those Shadow Word Deaths, getting that extra cleave damage, having Devouring Plague last for a lot longer is really, really nice. It makes my mastery work for me more often than not. My mastery is getting the full benefit, having all 3 dots on the enemy. I just really enjoy this. And there's a couple of packs that I'll show you in the dungeon where I have 3 Devouring Plagues up all at the same time, because I get a couple of free procs from Mind Devourer. And so I have 3 Devouring Plagues out on the enemies, and then I'm just like blasting everything with Psychic Link damage, and we're getting massive full uptime on our mastery because we have Devouring Plague out on all the enemies. So I really kind of enjoy that. It's probably better to take Mind's Eye in the end. I'll have to see as I kind of get some gear, but I really do enjoy Distorted Reality quite a bit. So that's the build there. Let's jump into some footage and take a look at it. Here's the opening section. I'm going to run through this entire dungeon. This is without cooldowns. I forgot to start recording the video right away. So this pull is without my major 1-minute cooldowns, which is Mindbender and Dark Ascension. So we're still doing respectable damage here. You can see I have 2 Devouring Plagues out, 1 there and 1 there, which is super cool. And they last for the entire pull, basically, for about as long as these guys end up lasting for. One thing I do want to take note of, you can break the entangling affix right now with Fade if you take Phantasm. Activating Fade removes all snare effects. This works on entangling, which we have right now. I forget to do it for most of this dungeon, but just remember you can do that, okay? So our damage is like 93k. Remember, I'm only 407 or 403 item level or something. Like, I don't have any item level at all. And we're still doing decent damage here. Here's the next pack. This is with all my cooldowns. I get Shadow Crash right off the bat into Dark Ascension and Mindbender. Here we go. Now we're trying to press Shadow Word Death and Mind Blast as much as possible. We get a Shadow Word Death proc there, or a Mind Blast proc, sorry. And then remember, we're trying to cast Shadow Word Death once they're below 20% HP, because it gives us a refresh. So they're both below 20%. So I can go Shadow Word Death here. I get a refresh, Shadow Word Death again, and you can just see how it chains off of itself. By the end of the pull, we're at the top of the damage meters once again. So it's pretty cool that way. And again, I just want to keep stressing, my item level is terrible. It's really bad here. I should be at like 415 or 420 at least, but this is my old character. Here's an example of 3 Devouring Plagues out at a time. 1, 2, 3 of them. They're all ticking. They're all giving me that mastery bonus. And then when my Void Torrent comes in and starts slapping, our damage just goes through the roof. 95k right now, because we have all the Devouring Plagues ticking, which is super, super cool. We almost break 100k here. Not quite. I wish we had, but we get really close. Then Shadow Word Death starts coming in at the end of the pull. Everybody's in Execute. I can get those procs that refresh. Shadow Word Death, Shadow Word Death. And we do get to 100k by the very end. So I love it. I love how this build plays. And you can see that was without our cooldowns. That was without any of our cooldowns. We didn't have our Mindbender or our Dark Ascension. So we would have done well over 100k if that was the case. Here's the first boss fight. Elder Lexa, we have our cooldowns and we have PI, which I forgot to keep giving to other people. I'm a very bad Shadow Priest. So here's our damage, starting to ramp up here. My Void Torrent's out. I get a Devouring Plague on the main boss, and then I was trying to get a Devouring Plague on the Effigy, and I didn't really get it up in time. The Effigy ends up dying, so that was a waste of a Devouring Plague, for sure. I should have been more careful with that. The damage is okay. It's not anything to write home about. We end up at about 51k by the end. Not bad for our item level. Here's a good pack right here. Again, we don't have our 1-minute cooldowns. I just used them. We have Shadow Crash, though. And then we have Void Torrent. I should have put a Devouring Plague down before I Void Torrented. Slight mistake there, but no big deal. We're doing 80k once again. It's just like the damage is just really good on every single pack, and that's what I really love about this. Here, we have Dark Ascension and Mindbender. We're ready to go. I get my dots going. Here we go. Devouring Plague is out. Dark Ascension, Mindbender. Devouring Plague again. I could have Devouring Plagued a different target, but that's okay. Now we get our damage going here. Devouring Plague into Void Torrent, and we're just ramping, man. 92, 96, over 100k right now. On 3 targets. Over 100k. Really good stuff right there. This next pack is kind of whatever. We do get decent damage, but I want to get to this pack here. Here we have our PI plus Dark Ascension and Mindbender. And I'm going to pop right here. Here's Shadow Crash, Dark Ascension, Mindbender, PI. We're going right now. We're going. Watch our damage here. It just starts spiking. Once I get some Deathspeaker procs, it gets really crazy. I have multiple Devouring Plagues out. Boom, boom, boom. Here comes Deathspeaker. 1, 2, 3 Shadow Word Deaths right there. I think I'm going to Halo here at some point. I'm trying to get off a... Again, the mobility is really good here. You get a bit of extra mobility because you're getting all these Shadow Word Death procs. And that's where your damage is coming from. Like, you're encouraged to press Shadow Word Death. You can move while pressing it. So, Devouring Plague, procs on Mind Blast, and then procs on Shadow Word Death are giving you incredible mobility here. And you can see we're at 106k. So, I'm really happy with that damage for our item level. It's really good. Here comes the first boss fight, or second boss fight, Kragmaw. Devouring Plague first. Again, Devouring Plague lasts for so long, it really allows me to get all of my damage out and have full effect of our mastery. Really, really cool. This fight actually requires a lot of mobility, so again, I think that we're actually pretty well situated for that because of the procs on Deathspeaker. We're getting less procs than we normally would because it's not AoE, but that's okay. Here, our damage is a little bit low, but we're about to get our cooldowns coming up. We have PI plus our Shadow Mindbender and Dark Ascension. Here we go. Casting it right now. Shadow Word Death proc, Devouring Plague, Mind Blast, Mind Games, Shadow Word Death, Mind Blast again. Now we're about to have to move here. Here comes Tantrum. That's okay. We can move, pick up some worms, cast Shadow Word Death while we're moving. Shadow Word Death, instant cast on Mind Blast, another Shadow Word Death proc. We get a Devouring Plague. We're basically out here, but we're almost getting up to 60k by the end. 56, 57k by the very end. So that's really good. If we had real item level, I think that the damage there would probably get up to like 80k on single target, which is super good. Here comes Shadow Crash. Don't have any cooldowns here, right? Like, don't have our major cooldown. So we're just relying on the Shadow Word Death procs and Void Torrent to carry our damage. Multiple Devouring Plagues are out. There's Void Torrent, splashing all our damage. And we got a couple procs on Shadow Word Death here. Watch. Shadow Word Death number 1. Boom. Shadow Word Death number 2. Boom. Shadow Word Death number 3. Got a reset. Boom. We got another reset. Shadow Word Death number 4. Shadow Word Death number 5. We literally did 5 Shadow Word Deaths on that one pull. That is what you're capable of doing with this build. Super cool. We pull all these guys, and then there is an old school skip I forgot about that you guys can do. If you're wondering, if you don't want to pull any of the trash in this section of the dungeon, here's an old school skip you can do. You can go to the left. There's a worm here, but you can go up this hill. So you want to go up this hill and then jump over here. You can jump over this next section as well. I do think you should kill these 2 Defilers. I don't think this boss fight is really doable unless you kill those 2 Defilers. You're going to see why in a minute. Here we have PI. We don't have our cooldowns up quite yet. So I pop PI just to get going. We also don't have Bloodlust at all, which is really good for Shadow Priest. We don't have Bloodlust in this entire dungeon, so that's a bit of annoying. But here comes my cooldowns. Shadow Word Death, or Dark Ascension, Mindbender. Sorry, guys, I keep messing that up. We mess up our shockwaves here. Watch this. Me and the monk, we go to the same spot, and then we're like, oh, shoot, we're in the same spot. Then we go back to the same spot over here. We completely mess it up, but that's okay. We're doing damage here. Again, Shadow Word Death procs give us so much mobility. We can fade here, which I keep forgetting, but we can fade here to stop the vines. We keep getting procs on Shadow Word Death. That's your filler button. That's what allows you to keep doing damage. And then, unfortunately, this DH, I believe, pulls these guys over here because he dashes way out here. A bit of a dumb move there, but that's okay. So now we have these 2 Defilers in the pull. Bit of a yikes. I think I pop Vamp Embrace here. I Mass Dispel people. Maybe I don't pop Mass Embrace. This is what we get. We get Shadow Word Death procs like crazy because we're in Execute on the boss. Shadow Word Death, Shadow Word Death. Lots of procs here for us. Boom, boom. I got another proc there. That was like 4 in a row. So, again, this is the kind of the gameplay loop you need to be looking for. Are the enemies in Execute? Can I get my Shadow Word Death procs going? If yes, then do it as much as you can. We'll skip past these guys here. We kill this worm, and then here's another skip you can actually do. You can kind of run along here to skip everything in here, but I believe they added a worm right here, and we end up pulling this worm by accident. I think I do, actually. So we end up giga wiping here because the tank doesn't realize what's going on. Fine, we all run back. Not a big deal. And we end up trying to skip here again. We shouldn't skip this. I'm telling them we should just kill these skellies. We should just kill the skellies because we need percentage anyway. And then he doesn't want to. He wants to skip. So we kind of jump up this hill, and we end up skipping. But it doesn't end up mattering because we end up coming here, killing these guys. And then another guy says, we need percentage. We should just kill the skellies. He says it right there. So apparently I'm just they're just not listening to me, and that's fine. Then he ends up going back and he ends up pulling these guys, which we didn't want to pull. We just wanted to pull the skellies. Anyway, it was a bit of a mess. But here's a really cool thing. They start this pull on the skellies. I'm not there yet. I'm way behind. Here comes Shadow Crash. I'm just entering the fight. Dark Ascension, Mindbender. Watch my damage climb here. We're at 30k. Watch it spike. 30k, 50k, 73, 75k, 80k, 90, 100k. It just goes crazy, man. It just goes. Once you start getting those procs with your Mindbender and Shadow Word Death, it's really cool. Last pull here, they added a worm. If you guys don't know, I get feared here by accident. I don't think that this guy's looking at me, but he's looking right at me, and I just couldn't tell, so I get feared like an idiot. But we're still doing decent damage. If I hadn't got feared there, I would have done like 100k on this pack for sure. But unfortunately, I lost a bit of damage on that section there. But that's okay. Let's get to the final boss. Final boss for us, again, requires a little bit of mobility. Dark Ascension, Mindbender, Devouring Plague, and we're going. We're trying to get our Mind Blast procs, our Shadow Word Death procs, to make sure that we proc our Mindbender. There's Shadow Word Death. Again, I got a Shadow Word Death proc, so I need to keep moving here. This allows me to move and do damage at the same time. I really enjoy that. And then when I need to, like, when I have a second to plant, I can do Void Torrent. But the rest of the time, I can be using those instant procs that I'm getting. And I really should have pressed. I missed an entire cast on Shadow Word Death here. That's a huge mistake. I went an entire 10 seconds without pressing Shadow Word Death. So this is stuff that I need to work on. And if you're wondering about the build, how do you optimize your damage? One of the big things is to press Shadow Word Death as soon as it comes off cooldown. Always keep pressing it. Because not only does it do damage, but it will contribute to your Psychic Link damage as well. So very, very important that you use that thing. I use Fade at the very end there to break the vines. Now I have my cooldowns coming up. We have Power Infusion with Dark Ascension and Mindbender right now. Here they come. Dark Ascension, Mindbender, and we're off to the races. Watch our damage climb. We're at 47k. We're going to start climbing here. Mind Blast, Shadow Word Death. And we're up to 51k. Probably above that once I get up here. And again, I really love that my Devouring Plague lasts for so long. It's just so good, man. 53k. That's decent single target damage for this item level. 56k. Really, it's not bad at all. And the boss goes down. And we end up getting about 62k overall. Let me look at the overall here. 63k. So this is where the damage is going to look like. Devouring Plagues at the top. Psychic Link. Shadow Word Death. 116 casts. Really, really huge damage on Shadow Word Death here. Inescapable Torment. 5.3%. That's not bad at all for only having to invest a couple of talent points. And remember, Mindbender gives you a ton of insanity back. So most of your insanity generation comes from Maddening Touch. Your Vampiric Touches give it to you. Your Mindbender will give it to you. Shadow Word Death now also generates 4 insanity. I don't think it did that before. And then your Cthulhu will be giving you a bunch of insanity generation as well as, of course, Void Torrent. So lots of interesting places to get your insanity. And then our damage is, here it is, pretty good. I really love this build. I want to get some more gear on my Shadow Priest so I can show how this build works at like an actual decent item level. So I'm working on that right now, guys. I'm working hard at trying to get some gear, getting some upgrades. But I'm going to keep plugging away with Deathspeaker. I think it works really, really well. And if you're interested in playing it, definitely let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about Distorted Reality versus Mind's Eye. I would love to hear what you guys think about it. Do you think this is a really, really bad talent to take, or is it actually decent? Because I actually love it, and I think I'm going to keep trying to run with it. So let me know what you think in those comments down below. I love you all. I will see you in the next one.